There was a cool, refreshing crispness in the air that morning. It was bright out. I remember getting Irie ready to go on our walk and onward to the dog park. Upon exiting my apartment from my balcony across the street, I see a man, and he's staring straight at us. Irie, my dog, starts barking at this man in a wheelchair that only has one leg. We exit down the stairs from the second story of our building, on through the front gate, and the man is nowhere to be found. I look down the block to my right. I even walk down the block to my left and around the corner. It's near impossible that anyone that handicapped could move that fast. I don't know if it was a ghost, but I know it was not the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. Join me as we go back to 2009, when I spent nearly 12 months studying abroad in Firenze, Florence, Italy, home of the Renaissance, and much, much more. It's Str8 Shk, episode 3, on the rhetorical sake. Welcome to the show. She said she was walking down the hallway of her Catholic school, and she passed a room and saw a nun without her headdress on, and the nun was bald, and it freaked her out. She must have been a siren, because he says she was at every street corner he walked that evening once he left the party, trying to beckon him, and he resisted, and then his wife became violently ill. Happenstance? I think not. I do think you will enjoy my book, God Sent Dog, the story of how one dog led a man, me, to sobriety. I also wrote Chasing God Alcoholically. Both of these books are available on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. Look, find me at my website, erhunter.live. That's erhunter.live. You can email me at earth, that's earth without the A, ERTH at erhunter.live. I'm on Instagram at The Rhetorical Sake. I'm at Twitter at sake_podcast. Well, I'm on Twitter, not at Twitter. You know what I'm saying. In any case, I really appreciate all the support, especially my people in Australia just showing up and showing out. UK, Ireland, New York, South Carolina, North Carolina, Alaska, what up? Hawaii, Virgin Islands. We international, y'all. Str8 Shk. So glad y'all made it. Hit me up, patreon.com/erhunter. Show some love. Got you, baby. Let's get it. Yeah. My neighbors have finally moved out. The only thing is, I swear, if I hear something on the other side of that wall, I'm gonna be straight shook. But yeah, things are good, you know. It's a nice, peaceful night leading into October here in 2019. Reminiscing back on my own ghost stories, the first real authentic one, and when strange stuff started happening, or maybe when I just started noticing, was in 2009 when I studied abroad in Florence, Italy. And, you know, I got on the plane. I was feeling like Jack from Lost, because that was like my all-time favorite show. It still is, to be honest. But, you know, we had a lot of lost heads in that squad of that group of college students that went over to Florence that year. So that was cool. We were all trying to designate who was, you know, which character and stuff like that. But, you know, I got there and I was the partier. The first night I got there, the seniors that I was hanging out with before flying over, you know, they were telling me on the first night, drag everyone out to this bar called Black Molly's. And I tried, and I only got a handful of people to go with me out of 60 people, 60 students, sophomore college students. I probably got like 5 or 6 people to go with me, but those are still my boys to this day. So there you have it. In any case, that was kind of my MO. And once I started doing my little work-study job, I got to know the Italians that were working at the campus. And our campus was a old hotel, clearly built at the turn of modernity. I don't know if it was like 100 years old, maybe 150 years old, maybe less than 100 years old, but it was about 5-6 stories, and I mean, high ceilings, small rooms, everything in Europe to us Americans, it seems like super small. And actually, me and my roommate, I'll call him, Gary for the time being, until I have his express permission to say his name on the show. We're some of the biggest guys in the group, actually, and we ended up in the lottery, and we won one of 2 of the smallest rooms in the house. So, it was just a small bathroom that apparently could fit a bidet, but the shower drain was underneath your feet when you sat on the toilet, if that makes sense. So the whole bathroom was the shower. The sink was right there too. And, we could barely walk past each other in the room. And then at the end of it, we had a view of the street from the 2nd story, which is more like the 3rd story. And this street is divided by a park that is inundated into the ground. So it's at a lower surface level than the streets. So traffic is going one way, opposite our building side. Let's say that's westbound, and then eastbound traffic is on the other side of the park. And there are bridges at each block, and this spans for about 5 or 6 blocks on the street. So I can see actually down the blocks. So I could see down 2 blocks to the end of the street, and I could see down 2 blocks on my left to the end of the street. And I clearly now have leverage over the view of the park. And the only way to get down there to the park, with this stream running through the middle of it, in between the westbound and eastbound 2 lanes of traffic on each side, were these stairs at the end of each block of the street where the bridges were. It's really cute. It's nice. And it was a nice view. That was the only, good part about that room. In any case, by about week 3 or maybe a month in, I was going out on my own with the Italians, and I think it was actually my first night out without having another American with me. And that's how I learned the language. Ciao ragazzi in Italia. So yeah, I'm dusty. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna sit up here and act like I have a degree in Italian. But I can hang. Most of the time, Italians that are in America are really impressed with my fluency. So I would say I can just have a discussion in Italian, but I wouldn't. I'd brush up. I'd do a little bit of studying before I walk into like a job interview. Like, you want to be the store manager at H&M in Florence? And I'd be like, fuck yes. In any case, so we were in Tuscany, and it was the end of summer, and the birds were chirping, and the seasons were just barely starting to change, and it was still humid out, and the Italians were returning from their beach houses with their olive skin, and we'd be walking the streets during orientation, hearing "Ciao bella, ciao bella." So it was everything you imagine a city center in Italia would be. Well, almost 25 years before that, in late August, around the same time I arrived, 1984, college students arrived from America for the first time to study abroad in Florence. Among them is a young co-ed named Janet Leake. What we know and what we do not know about Janet Leake's arrival to Florence is quite perplexing. See, what we do know is that Janet did get off of the plane with her fellow classmates. They probably got on a charter bus and were taken to their villa or campus away from home, their study abroad location in the city of Florence. Well, upon arrival, they noticed Janet's bags were unclaimed. She was nowhere to be found, and she has never been found. My heart just goes out to Janet's parents, my deepest condolences and my applause, because they've never stopped looking for their daughter. And I guess raising awareness and bringing to light how something so beautiful, so inspiring, that was expected to be so, life-changing and invigorating, an experience once in a lifetime, to live in Italy for a year and to just go and vanish. It's rather strange, and for it to be unsolved with no trace of her. It left us perplexed, and by us, I mean my fellow students I was living with in 2009. Our main classroom was in the basement. All 4 of our classrooms were in the basement of this old hotel. On the way down the stairs, a class prior to us had painted the staircase going down to the basement, and descending order of the layers of Dante's poetry or poem, The Inferno, so the levels of hell, as we descended to class every morning, roughly around 6:50, 7 a.m. My roommate, Gary, usually was waking me up from a long night out. So I was late and sometimes in my pajamas in class, which was against the rules. But on that first night out, I remember getting back before curfew, which was 2 a.m. I made it in plenty of time. It was around 1:30 in the morning. Mostly everybody was asleep because we're all still pretty jet lagged, even a few weeks in. And sleep is a hot commodity when you're living in one building with 60 other students and faculty and their family with kids and other professors and things like that. So, we respected each other's space when it was nightfall. I, being the loner that I am, get in around 1:30 a.m. Obviously, I know I'm going to wake up Gary because our room is small and our wardrobes are right near the window. And it's not a balcony, but our windows are open and we have a railing like a balcony on the outside of the glass. And as soon as I take off my jacket, I look outside and I'm looking at the street and the park. I see a young woman standing at the park directly in front of the villa, our building. And she's facing me, our building. And it looks like she was looking at me. And I could confirm that. However, she didn't really have a face. She was visual and clear enough for me to see her body. I could see her hair blowing in the wind. It looked like she might have been a brunette or a dark blonde color, shoulder length or longer than shoulder length hair, a brown leather jacket. It wasn't a black leather jacket, but it seemed like it was brown and leather, jeans. And they looked like they were flared out a little bit. They weren't skinny jeans, and this was 2009, so we were all wearing skinny jeans. She didn't look like she was from my time, and she was just staring. And so I woke up my roommate, and he was already kind of up, but I was like, yo, can you come tell me, you're seeing what I'm seeing? I was like, do you see that chick out there? And he's like, yeah, I see her. And she's just standing still, facing us. She's got a purse clutched to her side, but you can't make out her face. And I could tell she's a white Caucasian woman, younger, just standing there, staring at us at this park. And it's 1:30 in the morning. A woman in Italy wouldn't be out alone at that time of night, especially not in some park that's out of plain sight of most of the public. So we try to wave. We don't want to yell because we might wake up everyone else in the villa. Everything's like marble floors. It's this really old building. It's almost like a museum. And she doesn't move. She does not budge. And Gary finally gives up and he's like, I'm going to go back to bed. And I have to change out of what I just came in and put on my PJs. So I take off my shirt, I take off my pants, and in between putting on my pajamas, I look back out there to see her, and she's gone. And I mean, there is no one on the street. And I can see for 2 blocks both ways, east, west. I could see, if she had left that park from where she was at, even in a full sprint, I would have seen her. There's no way she leaped and bound up those stairs and across a bridge and out of sight. I was 3 stories up in the middle of this city street, and it was virtually empty. Not a car going by, and she was gone. And at that point, I knew I had experienced something that was not popular, and I pretty much kept it to myself for a while. I mean, me and Gary chopped it up in the morning about it, but it's not like we ran around talking about it to other people in the villa because, things spread like wildfire in college regardless if you're living together or not. That's just how young folks are. I often wonder if that night may have been the anniversary, the 25-year anniversary of her disappearance, and maybe that's why she had returned to pay homage or to look at what she missed out on, or maybe she was warning me. Maybe it wasn't about me at all. One thing I have come to the conclusion of with regard to the man in the wheelchair with one leg that was recently in front of my condo where I live now, and Janet, is that one, I sincerely believe and felt intuitively that it was Janet Leake. I kind of knew that off the cuff. But 2, they're always at a distance, and they were about both the same distance away from my residence. And they're always just staring. And now I have these 2 tall chairs sitting outside of where I live. I found them. I like good finds, but they're nice wooden tall stools, and they have back support, and I need that back support. And I like high stools because I'm a taller guy. And I put him out there, and I just say, I pray to God almost all the time that he encamp his holy angels around me. And so I just say, they're for my archangels that are chilling, like detailed security service for me at night. And I gave him a little seats to sit on. I thought that was cute. But I also think that a hedge of protection has been around me, and that is why spirits have had to keep at bay. But you will find, as I continue with my stories, that actually some entities, some activity is a little bit more blunt, so to speak. Hands-on, maybe, or hands-off. I'll explain. Stay tuned. All right, yeah. You enjoying the show? You feeling this shit? You feeling the suspense up in this bitch? Well, go to patreon.com/erhunter and support the show. Extra resources that help is my organization, and we produce this podcast. And we host series like this, Str8 Shk, as well as Keeping It Real, KIR episodes. We gotta keep doing what we're doing, and it takes a little bit of backing. I'd really appreciate it. Patreon.com/erhunter. We're changing the world, one episode at a time. Welcome back. So I really wasn't gonna say anything because, it's like a real American horror story abroad. You're living with a bunch of chicks. There's more chicks than they are guys, and they don't want to be talking about some girl that got kidnapped and never to be found again all the time. And I'm like, I saw her ghost, so I wasn't running around talking like that. But it only took a matter of time before one evening, about a week or 2 after that, an Asian girl in our group, maybe Chinese or Japanese, I don't know. I'll call her Arlene. She came into the student center, which was like the main living room, which obviously used to be the lobby of this hotel. And she was straight shook. I mean, she was shook. And I'll never forget the look on her face. And she just sat down. She was white as a sheet or blanket, or white as a ghost, as they say. And she explained that she was Skyping with a friend near what seemed like the back of the building to us, but it was the main lobby for the university. So a lot of the faculty administration offices were over there. But it was the back gate to us. We never went in and out of there. Deliveries, visitors, things like that were just going. We had our residential side, like the hotel, and that was the business side. There was also the music room on that side of the building. But she was in a room that used to be a foyer, a real little foyer. It was almost like a little, how do you say, like not cabaret, partition or something in between rooms. And there was a piano in there. So it was a pretty narrow hallway. It's a smaller room, obviously in between this back door and this administrative offices. And it's one of the few rooms where you actually get decent privacy living with 60 people. So she set her little laptop on top of the computer. She's Skyping with a friend, and she explained that her friend started to ask her who is the elderly woman sitting behind her. And she explained, yes, there's a bench about a foot away from her behind her, but there's no one else in this little room with her. And her friend says, no, there's an old woman. She just walked in and sat down right behind you. I can see her on my computer screen. And so Arlene was really freaked out about that. And so were we. And that's when I kind of spilled the beans on my story, I think. But not too, I tried to be selective on who I told. Because I don't want to sound crazy either, because I had never experienced anything like that. And it happened. And Gary saw it happen too. So I wasn't scared, but I was definitely aware at that point. So after that, in between some major points and interactions, encounters, I would notice that in my little dorm room, it would sound like Gary had come in the room. And I got the top bunk, and he claimed the bottom bunk. And that's just how we lived for that 2 semesters. I stayed for 3 semesters in total, and we'll get to that. But it would sound like he came in and sat down on his bunk bed, and then I'd look down underneath my bunk and no one would be there. And he'd walk in from upstairs or from his bathroom, and I'd be like, dude, like the weirdest thing, like it just sounded like you came in the room. I could have, like, the door open and closed. I didn't see it because I'm laying in my bed taking a nap or something, or probably hungover, but I heard you, and I heard your bed squeak when you sat down, but you're not there. Well, I'll never forget when it started to change to winter and it got cold, and it was awesome to experience the weather, the seasons changing in a European country, let alone Florence, Italy. And in the front of the building, what we deemed the front, where us students would go in and out, there were these 2 big mahogany doors. And you could feel how many people, how many lives had come through those doors, travelers, near and far, wealthy, not so wealthy. You would have clearly had to have some decent amount of money to have stayed at this hotel in the facility at the villa. But, these doors, they just held so much reverence. So I always was kind of drawn to that energy because I know I'm a traveler at heart, and I'm a water baby too. I always, was in the ocean as a kid growing up. And I surf and stuff like that. It's just a part of me, and to wander this rock that we are stranded on here is suspended in the middle of time and space. So I'm in the student center foyer, and you need a code to get into. You needed a code to get into the student center. It's like your PIN number or something that we all shared for our front door as our key. So if anybody lost the key, if you're too drunk to remember, that's your fault. And that never happened to me. And the code changed multiple times while I was there, just FYI. So I held my own. In any case, I'm sitting there with my back to the front doors. There's a security camera outside because they were watching us to make sure we weren't breaking curfew, because you could go out after 2 a.m. like once Monday through Thursday, and then you had to be back, or you could stay out one night Friday through Sunday or something like that. And so anyway, I had to make sure I was back by 2 a.m. on most nights. So they had the camera, and then if you were expecting someone or if someone knocked on that front door, we had a security monitor above the computer that was in this foyer, up in the corner in the ceiling. So you could just look up and see who's standing outside knocking on the door. Well, I'm at the computer. It's probably like 4 o'clock in the afternoon or maybe 5 o'clock in the evening. And I'm like checking my email or something. And there's 3 loud knocks on these mahogany doors. And I look up at the security camera, and there's no one outside. There's no one on the camera. There, I could see it's live street view, CCTV, but maybe they're in the doorway or they're just out of sight of the camera and they walked away. So I get up and I go to open up these big doors, and I keep my 1 foot in and I step out the building, and I'm stretched, and it's like it's a whole nother time. It's like a vortex or something. And when I say there was no one on the street for 2 blocks each way, like once again, and it got so cold. Like the seasons were just changing from fall to winter, but when I opened the door, it was like this, it took your breath away, and this crispness in the air. And there wasn't a car, and I just can't remember for the life of me if the laundromat, because I really think it was some type of time slip or something. And maybe that was someone that had been there before, or a lost traveler or something like that is in between worlds, or I don't know. But I knew intuitively not to go outside of the building, not to let that door close behind me. And I'm glad I didn't. But those 3 knocks, I'll never forget hearing them right behind me, looking at the security camera, no one outside, and then opening the door. And I mean, no one, there's no way, you would have had to run full speed Usain Bolt status to get to the end of our building and then round the corner for me not to have seen you. So I had these first initial interactions. So it was kind of growing on me. There's something brewing in Florence. And I guess my sensitivity or clairvoyance or just spiritual perception started gaining momentum, started gaining traction, and it definitely got my attention, and it has stuck with me since. So in making friends with the locals, they began to invite me out to their local towns outside of the city center, their villages. And many of them in Tuscany, as most of us know, have beautiful vineyards with very fine wines that are world-renowned. And we went to one of those villages, Rufina, and there's a winery there. And, we had cheese and wine and hors d'oeuvres and things like that during the day, and went on a little hike and bike tour. And they gave us a tour of this old building. And the tour guide told the story about how in the early 1900s there was a party there. And the way he said it, and in his broken English and thick Italian accent, he was saying that the devil showed up to this party and was in the form of a good-looking man and convinced these revelers to have an orgy. And this orgy ensued in this room that we were all standing in 2009, that this guy's telling us this happened. And he said that the devil opened up the floor and sucked everyone to hell. And he points to this scratch on the floor. He said, this has been here since that day, since that evening. And that was pretty weird. So I didn't get any crazy experiences there, and thank God. Everyone was really friendly. It was cool to be outside of the city in the thick of Tuscany, I'll tell you that for sure. And there were many nights I spent alone in this villa, in this old hotel, because like I said, I stayed for 3 semesters. The faculty changed after the first 2 semesters, fall and spring, and then there was a summer semester. And so they had a communications professor coming out there, and I was a comm major, and I was like, why not? I can knock out some of my upper divisions with this one professor in a small amount of time and live in Italy another couple of months. Heck yeah. So In between when my spring semester colleagues returned and the summer ones arrived, I would drive in from the outskirts of Tuscany where I was staying, and we'll get to that. And I'd go to Black Molly's and some other bars and try to hang out with my Italian friends, but I was really on my own and in Italy, 20 years old. I would get drunk and I didn't want to drive the moped back to the countryside, so I would stay at the villa. And I tried to go upstairs to the room I had slept in on the second story, where Gary had shared with me for nearly 8 months at that point. So once I started going up the stairs, though, I got this incredible feeling of fear. And I realized I didn't want to go up there. Something intuitively told me, just stay close to the front door. And it started to sink in that I was going to be sleeping in this big edifice, this ancient building, all by myself. And I wasn't blackout drunk, so I was putting myself to sleep. And as I lay on the couch, one of the couches in the student center, I would constantly hear footsteps. It was like someone walked through the front door and through the foyer or through the student center even, and into the dining hall that was right behind me, or they'd be coming through the dining hall, and then the ice machine, the ice would rattle and break, and that was real, but I could hear footsteps, like people moving, coming and going, as they do in hotels. And I never remembered falling asleep. I always remembered just closing my eyes and putting a pillow over my head or something and just trusting that eventually I would pass out. And one morning, I woke up, and this little boy is staring at me, and he's toe-to-toe with me, and he's about 6 years old. Little white boy, black hair, dark eyes, is staring right at me. I was shook. But turns out he was actually one of the faculty's kids, and I was familiar with him, and I told him to get out my face. In any case, that went off and on, and in between staying at the villa most of the time, I was there to house sit, and I was house sitting in the countryside of Tuscany. I had a gathering with my Italian local friends and actually a high school friend who was with another university, and she brought her American girlfriends with her, and we had a good time. We had a great time. The Italian guys loved it, and it was just cool to see two worlds collide like that. And nobody came out there to visit me after that. One Italian friend, for like one whole day or a night. He spent the night, but that was it. And I was there for 3 weeks on my own. Well, staying there didn't start off too great because I was also dog sitting. And shout out to the woman I dog sat for, because she is an incredible, just awesome. She's like the 14th wonder of the world or something. I've never met anyone so kind and tenacious, gregarious and powerful. She's such a juxtaposition, and I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it weren't for her. She was actually the first person I ever face-to-face personally came out to, and I think that says a lot. So she trusted me with her 2 chocolate Labradors, and one of them, the older one, had been ill. And we had been making visits to the vet because in Italy, you can't just drop off your dog at the vet. And she had stuff to do, so she would ask me to go and stay while this dog got like chemo or something. She'd be hooked up to an IV. And that year, the volcano in Ireland or Iceland exploded, erupted, and a lot of the flight travel was delayed. So actually, me and her spent a lot of time together in her beautiful home in the Tuscan hills with her 2 chocolate labs, and one of which was, just had been sick for a while and was elderly. Well, her flight just kept getting delayed, and we were playing it by ear day after day. We just really didn't know what day she was going to leave. And the whole reason I was there and staying in Italy in between semesters was to house and dog sit. But it was great spending time with her above all. And she knows who she is. I don't know if she ever listens to this, and if you've been to my program, you know who she is too. And you should be jealous because I got to spend like a week with the queen. So, ha. In any case, the day that she left, she finally got the call. Her flight was booked. They got her. The next morning, after a walk with the two dogs, I took her usual route. I'm sitting in her guest room on the second story, and the younger dog is in the doorway motioning, like wiggling really heavily, and I could tell she wants me to come look at the stairs. And so I go to the top of the stairs, and on the middle landing, the older dog, Chocolate Lab, is having a seizure or stroke and is flipped upside down, clearly has fallen, and is seizing, foaming at the mouth, shaking. So I bound down the stairs, I leap over her, and as I open up the front door, I'm face to face. The only thing between us is the railing of the stairs, because she's eye level with me where she's at on the landing, and she just coughs her last breath and her tongue rolls out of her mouth, and she died right in front of my eyes. And the woman I was house sitting and dog sitting for was on her flight by then. She was in the air. So it's not like I could call her immediately. And I went to get her neighbor, and he actually brought his son over like immediately. I was like, oh no, he's young. Like he's like, 6 years old. Maybe he shouldn't see this. He's like, no, he needs to see this. That's how they do in Italy. And I had to bag up that poor dog and make sure it's plastic wrapped in some garbage bags so that the cingale, the boars that were roaming through the Tuscan hills, wouldn't come and eat her before we got to lay her to rest. And so that night I had to sit guarding that dog's body, and dog sitting still, her younger sister, who had just lost her older sister, Chocolate Lab. What was peculiar, I called the woman's father who was picking her up here in the States from the airport, and I would later find out that was the first thing he told her when she saw him. But he knew he couldn't hide it from her. Those were her kids, and that was her first puppy that she had had since transitioning fully from America to Italy. And she left me responsible for it, and it died on my watch, and that weighs on me heavily to this day. But at the same time, she was very understanding. When I spoke to her on the phone after about a week, when she got settled in and kind of, I guess, went through a little grieving process, and got to business too, because she was behind schedule, so it was like a good week before we talked on the phone, the time difference and everything. And I told her, I was like, yeah, your younger one she goes under this fold-out bed I'm on, and I could feel her under me, pressing up against the mattress from the opposite side of the bed. And she said, that's really weird, because she never used to do that. But her older sister used to do that all the time. And there were moments when I would see this younger dog playing as if she were playing with another dog in the house, like running around and jumping and dancing, but like as if she was really playing with her sister. But there was no other dog there. So after a while, I would take the bus in and out of town if I wasn't borrowing this awesome woman's moped that she allowed me to drive while she was away, because I couldn't drive a stick shift. So she would have left me her car. But I kind of liked being on a moped. It was the closest thing to a motorcycle. I just felt part of Firenze at that point. I was flowing with traffic. You kind of get the hang of European driving, things like that. And I'll be honest, I was straight shook one night. I came home, and that's why my ass stopped driving home after going out, because I went off on a dirt road, and I took the curve too fast, and I fell. And it was the middle of the night, and I was like embarrassed, but I was scared too. I was shook. I was like, dang, if I got hurt out here, nobody would know. Like it was pitch dark riding through them hills, like no street lights, narrow roads. That was like that called me to be brave. I had to be brave during those times. But it kind of helped me propel into being an adult because I was 20 years old and going through the woods in a foreign country, young black man, green eyes. It gets a little sketch. And I was really uncomfortable out there, not necessarily in the house, but loneliness really got to me. Heavy drinking alone got to me. So I would go out and stay with friends, and it turned out one of the nights I was out, I got caught. I wasn't at home with the younger dog in the evening one time because the neighbors, the same family that was next door that helped me bury the dog, they had got broken into. A burglar. And to burglarize a house out there in the hills, like, you had to have been sitting, waiting, watching. And so they must have seen that the dog stayed, so they didn't break into where I was supposed to be house sitting. But they went through the little boy's window in the other house, and they just happened not to be home. He wasn't in the room, thank God. So, I got called. And they're like, you're supposed to be watching the dog, and her sister died, and she can't be there alone all the time. And then there was a burglary. So I was shook for a little bit, but my Italian friends finally confessed, and I had noticed if I rode the bus, there were these little, it's like if you chop a city bus into a cake size. It was like a fourth size of a city bus, but it was a city bus, but it only had room for like 15 people max. Like, I would get on that little joint because these roads were super narrow and some of them were dirt roads and stuff. And the bus would still run, and it would be all these nuns. It would be all of these nuns. And it would just be a bus full of like 10 nuns. And I would just be riding through the Tuscan Hills. Turns out this house was down the street from where the Vatican sends priests to train for exorcisms. So that is why my Italian friends did not want to come and hang out with me all the time because they didn't like that side of town. There was also a funeral home at the start of the street. Yeah, and I didn't know that, but I think that explains the bad energy I was getting or something. I don't know. I felt pretty uncomfortable there, but I was also just alone and in the country. So who knows? But I think that was pretty cool. I didn't even know I was living that close to something like that. And I really respect that lady because she was big on the whole just spiritual warfare aspect of religiosity and spirituality and the context of which the Vatican exists and all this stuff. It was beautiful. And she took us to see relics in these ancient cathedrals in Assisi and Palermo and all these Siena, where they have the horse races on my birthday, August 16th, every year. It was a beautiful time. And I actually have several more paranormal stories to tell regarding my time in Italy. For the time being, though, I'm going to call it quits tonight. I'm going to leave you to chew on that for a little while. In the meantime, please hit me up, www.erhunter.live. That's www.erhunter.live, Live. Or you can email me at earth, that's ERTH at erhunter.live. I'm on Instagram at The Rhetorical Sake, Twitter, sake_podcast, and we could really use your support. I want to keep this thing going. I really love doing it, and I got so many more stories to tell. You don't want to miss it, so help me deliver it. Patreon.com/erhunter. Patreon.com/erhunter. $5 minimum. You become what I call a Saker. You're in the Sakers tier program, and you get a free copy of Chasing God Alcoholically, bonus content, full-length interviews. We'll see where this goes, but I would really appreciate it. And so would Irie, my dog, because the brother's got to eat. In any case, so glad y'all could make it today. Subscribe, rate, and review the show. God Sent Dog, baby. Amazon, Kindle, get at me. The Rhetorical Sake, Str8 Shk, episode 3. We'll be back, part 2, Italy. Ciao.